Proponents of marijuana legalization are thankful the first recreational pot is for sale in Michigan. But is Michigan ready? And after too much focus on union corruption and strike votes, attention is back on the wheels themselves. From an electric Mustang to Tesla's salvo in the truck wars to a new movie taking us on a Ford-fueled thrill ride, the buzz is suddenly back. Today is Sunday, December 1st, 2019, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. I hope you're enjoying what is left of this holiday weekend. With such a late Thanksgiving, it is now December, and it feels like Christmas is coming at us at warp speed. We're going to indulge our need for speed this morning. You know, it has been a while since we've just felt a big rush of auto adrenaline. We've been sorting out the far less sexy business of labor contracts and UAW arrests and resignations, but all of a sudden, we've had a lot of Detroit's signature industry to talk about the last few weeks. First, Ford took the wraps off its entry into the all-electric world and its Mustang SUV. Stakes couldn't be higher for that. But just as pre-orders were coming in, Tesla took the wraps off its invasion of the space Ford considers its home turf. What did you make of the Cybertruck? Okay, put aside the disastrous demonstration of the windows. This mashup of a truck and a DeLorean was a polarizing affair, but in no time at all, 200,000 people had put down deposits to get one. We're going to talk about the rush of auto excitement that's back a little bit later on this morning. But up first, today, the few who have been able to land licenses to sell recreational marijuana are now allowed to open the doors on a new era for the state of Michigan. But are we really ready for it? And I mean that in so many ways, from jobs that require drug tests to the race for licenses to the communities who are saying, no, you're not selling that stuff here. Well, is that what you voted for? It's all coming up today on Flashpoint. Today is December 1st, and that means recreational marijuana is now for sale in the state of Michigan. At least it is at the few retailers who've been able to nab licenses and happen to operate in towns that haven't opted out. It has been the Wild West really for over a year in Michigan. Is it going to be better now, or does confusion reign, at least for a little while? Let's talk about it this morning with Andrew Brisboe. He's the head of Michigan's Marijuana Regulatory Agency. Antoinette Sarfo is back with us again, the former Detroit news anchor, very familiar face, who's become a leading advocate for medical marijuana in the state. And Dustin Walsh writes about the marijuana industry in Michigan for Crain's Detroit Business. Good to have you all here this morning. Andrew, let me start with you. I don't expect you to tell me, as the representative for the state, no, we're not ready for this. But are we as ready as we should be, or is this going to be chaos for a little while?
Well, I think the law gave us a year to get ready, and we were ready before that. We started taking applications over a month before we had to and issued the first round of licenses here in November. So I think we're as prepared as we can be. The demand is already there. The consumer market exists. So I think it's going to take a while for the regulated industry to catch up with that demand that's already there.
Are we worried at all about the way that a lot of these communities doing the opt-out? Some of them are really not wanting to be a part of this. Others, it's kind of wait and see, right? We really don't have a handle on what it's going to look like yet.
And the will of the voters, obviously, was to have some degree of municipal control over how many facilities there are and where they're located. But I think you're right. A lot of municipalities need a little bit more time to understand what the state level program looks like. And in many cases, they want to see how it's going to unfold in municipalities that are similarly situated so they can make the best decisions moving forward.
It's interesting because what we have now, Antoinette, are really two different industries. They're supposed to be, in fact, because of the regulations around them, they really are separate. The marijuana side, the medical side and the recreational side. I guess what I find myself wondering is, you've labored so hard for people to understand the medical properties of what's going on here. Does that get lost in the shuffle, and do people now group it all in as one thing?
I don't believe it gets lost in the shuffle. I think that now just the market has expanded. I still feel that you are going to have a lot of people who are going to be recreational users. They're going to make a recreational purchase, but they're going to use that product for a medicinal reason, even if it's to self-medicate themselves or if it's to use it for one of the myriad conditions that's not approved as a qualifying condition here in Michigan. I am concerned about shortages. We've had product shortages all year long, and that this is now going to exacerbate that problem.
An interesting thing has happened with prices as well.
Yes.
That's what happens in shortages.
Absolutely. So the wholesale cost of cannabis right now has increased at least 50%, about 50, but between 35 and 50% in some places. I know that when we were sourcing cannabis maybe 6 months ago, we were paying anywhere from $2,300 to $2,800 a pound, maybe at the most $3,000. Right now, we're receiving word that places are selling it for about $4,500 a pound. That's before recreational or adult use sales take effect.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in the middle of December? I'm forecasting even more significant shortages.
Yeah. Dustin, you've educated me on so much of this as you've been covering this moving forward. Where would you say, what are your biggest concerns right now as it starts here on December 1st? What do we not really have a handle on yet?
Well, I think she's correct that, you know, the shortages and the pricing is going to be a big issue. People are going to be waiting in lines and then maybe not getting it. And my concern is that people then return to the black market, I think is the biggest issue that Andrew has to face here and try to get people back to that market. So yeah, there's going to be...
That's been one of the stunners to learn. A lot of people thought by voting this, making this legal, we're going to chase the black market out of here. That's not what happens.
No, it's not. I mean, what we've seen in other states is the black market continues to grow. As we mentioned earlier, you know, in California, the black market is going to be triple sales of the legal market, which is an astounding number. Again, they're a supply state, and we have to worry whether we become a supply state as more and more product comes online. But that's a long time off. So what happens between now and then is going to be the interesting point to see.
Well, we do have to worry about that part of the black market, Andrew, because we're surrounded by states that have not opted for even medical marijuana in many cases. Don't we become the place where there's a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better word, drug trafficking going across the state lines?
It's certainly something that we have to watch. And we work closely with our law enforcement partners to create a regulatory environment, one that's friendly to business, so we can encourage participation from businesses, create the supply in the regulated market, because I think that pulls consumers in. When we look at price, one of the major factors there is products were sourced from unregulated sources, which keeps costs low. So now that we're building in the fully regulated model, there's testing that's required. So now we can offer some assurance to consumers that the products that they're consuming, they can be sure that it's free of certain contaminants and that it's a safer approach to consuming the products.
It also turns out, though, that it's really expensive to do this the right way, to do it legally, to have the licensing, to do the inspections. So the black market can compete on that front quite easily, can't they?
Well, yeah, there's no control over, say, the pesticides they're using and whether they're safe for human consumption. We've recently seen issues, obviously, with lung injury in individuals that are using products that are contaminated with certain thickeners or cutting agents. So we restrict that in the regulated market through a newly released set of emergency rules to offer some consumer assurance that the products are free of those contaminants. And that's important. But yes, in the short term, that drives costs up as we wait for the regulated supply to grow to meet the consumer demand.
What's your concern about the vaping problem right now, Anquinette? A lot of people, I think, have resorted to that because it doesn't create the smell that the other product does, and that bothers a lot of people who even voted in favor of this. So what are your concerns, though, about trying to figure that out?
I still vape every day. I vape using licensed, tested products. And I tell people all the time, trust the place where you're getting your products from and trust the actual products that you have and that you're using. What's great about the testing mechanism that the state has put in place is that quite often you can just use a QR code on your phone and it takes you instantly to all of the test results for that particular product. So I still have full faith and confidence in tested, licensed, regulated products. But if you're buying a bootleg card off of the street or from the black market, you don't know what you're getting, and it's a very good chance that you're getting something that's made with pesticides and that's cut with something that's illegal and possibly dangerous.
The other thing, Dustin, that's interesting, the communities that have opted out, some of them, the citizens there voted in favor of it. Mm-hmm. And then the city council, or however their municipal structure works, have decided to sit it out. There's a really interesting sort of dynamic that's developing around the politics of this.
Right, and I think it's twofold, right? It's either they're doing it because even though they voted for it, they don't necessarily want to see it. I think there's a lot of that with especially things that used to be illicit, right? It may be legal now, but I still don't want to see it. Mm-hmm. And the other aspect too is who's writing those local, municipal laws. It's always we always compare it to prohibition, right, with alcohol. Well, who do you think wrote the laws when we were re-regulating alcohol? People that drank. I think in this case, not a lot of those people are marijuana users. So it's tough to kind of navigate that in the will of the people, and it's really easy to put out a press statement that says, no, we're not interested, than it is to actually draft compassionate, common sense rules to allow that in your community.
Two other components I'll let anybody weigh in on it that wants to. Law enforcement trying to be ready for how they're supposed to deal with this new world, but also, as I mentioned earlier, businesses, a lot of them drug test, and a lot of them, is it going to be ethical for a business to say you can't test positive for marijuana if it's legal in the state for people to smoke marijuana?
I'll jump in.
Sure.
It is one of my goals is to make sure that more and more companies decide to no longer test for cannabis use. I was a person who was on 9 pharmaceuticals, anything from Adderall to muscle relaxants. I'm pretty sure that I'm a much safer person on the streets, basically taking my cannabis at night and then getting up in the morning and going about my day than as safe as I was compared to all of the other medications or drugs that I was on. When you look at alcohol use, if people are not tested for alcohol use, I feel they shouldn't be tested for cannabis use. It's one thing, you should never come to your job under the influence of anything. And there are ways that you can make sure people are not under the exact influence of a drug in that moment. But to blanket to a zero tolerance policy on on testing for cannabis, I'm hopeful that more Michigan companies will follow suit, like Las Vegas and other places in New York, where they've decided to no longer test for cannabis use.
I think this problem will eventually sort itself out because the main issue that companies don't care either way. They just want a safe workplace.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with it. So the issue that they're having is, I can test you if you get into an accident in a high-low or whatever. I can test you to see if you're drunk. I can't test you to see if you are immediately under the influence of marijuana.
Yeah.
As that technology changes, as the drug testing becomes more clear, more concise, that problem will take care of itself. They'll eliminate drug testing because they want as many people to work at their company as they can. They're not going to care anymore. So as soon as the science catches up, that'll answer the questions for them.
Great conversation as we step into a new era. As we said, we can change things legally, culturally, might take a little bit longer. Thank you all very much for being here. Terrific to have you. We come back, we'll talk about all the buzz in the auto world. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.